Howdy Pipers, and Owen Slinger here. If you haven't tried GLP's Jackknife Plug and you like Dark Fire Kentucky, I suggest you give it a whirl. So that's what I'm smoking right now, and every time I cut into it, it just keeps getting better and better. When it says plug on the GLP's line, it means plug. You're gonna need you a good knife. And I have to cut the crap out of that plug. It's kind of like if you had Peterson Perfect plug. Very plug. So I'm basically going into part 3 here of meeting Jesus. I'm not sure how well it's being received. He's not the Jesus that everybody's preached to me. All right? He's not the Jesus everyone's preached to me before or after this event in 2008. But aside from how he appeared to me and the things he said to me, there was this part where it just kind of segued into him saying, I'm going to show you something, and this is to come. He didn't say when, but why would he show me if I'm not going to be here for it, right? That's just kind of what hits me. Why would he show me what's to come if I'm not going to be here for it? And when he showed me, it wasn't descript, all right? It was like showing me like just a slew of images. There was no movement to it. It was just images. So keep that in mind while I'm describing this kind of jumble of crazy images to you. So the first thing he showed me is what made me basically lose so many jobs, so many friends, and my actual family. My family will have nothing to do with me because I mentioned the first thing that I said to them. I said a pandemic will come to them. I didn't know at the time it would be a fake one. All I told them was a pandemic will come because he showed me basically images of sick people, and they were basically standing across from not sick people. All the sick people, they had these masks on, and they were pointing to the not sick people who looked fine, but they were divided, almost like they were standing across the street from each other. The not sick people looked very confused, and the sick people looked kind of like they were very upset with the not sick people. And the only reason I knew they were sick was because there was just this, I hate to call it a vibe, but there was this vibe attached to the image that kind of like inserted the understanding of the image into my head. That's kind of what all these images are. I see the image, and this understanding of the image is inserted, into my knowing or something. And, I went around telling people, hey, a pandemic's going to be coming, probably in about a decade. And that obviously people thought I was crazy, thought I was, gonna get rid of me. That they wanted nothing to do with me. I stood by it, and they didn't want to hear it. I wasn't prophesizing. I was just telling people what I saw and felt was true. You know. but he also showed me images of, you know, places on fire. Um, I don't know if that, you know, goes hand in hand with, you know, scripture or whatever, but I feel like a part of the thing is fire happened, then water, then this or whatever, you know. But it was places on fire, it was wooded places, and some places that would surprise you that were on fire, you know, like stone buildings were on fire, which it was weird to me, but there were definitely things on fire. The understanding that came with that was it was not something a higher power was responsible for, but it was something of man's doing, and that it was something man was doing behind in the shadows to itself. And you know, another thing that he showed me, which is a big part of why I became interested in, you know, Native American prophecies and stuff, is he showed me a picture of white people you know, basically sitting with Native Americans, and they looked at peace. They looked like they were very happy to be together. And the understanding that was in my head about that was people started to realize a lot of the things they were being told were wrong, and started to realize that it was important to return to natural ways. And they couldn't figure out how to do that outside of going to indigenous people who had stayed doing that. Because, I don't know, I don't feel like it's half as easy to get into an Amish community as it would be a Native American tribal setting. It's probably easier to approach the Native Americans and get in with them. It's just my opinion. Not that I've ever tried it, but that was the understanding that came with it. And then there was some things, images inserted into my head that felt like biblically specific, right? And one of them was a massive thing in the sky falling down into the ocean, and you know, it had Wormwood vibes. You know, it definitely had Wormwood vibes, and the imagery was kind of like split imagery, where there was this big, massive, what looked like kind of looked like the moon, but way different, right? Sitting up in the sky, and it didn't belong there. You know, it's almost like it had showed up and didn't belong there. And the other part was this thing falling into the ocean. Not that thing, but another thing falling into the ocean. And the way I understand it is if a large, you know, stellar core is moving through space or whatever that is, right? It's probably pulling things with it. And that's what I gathered from that. But it made me very interested later into looking at cyclical cataclysmic events, you know, and a lot of the major ones are cyclical. So it made me look into that. Outside of that imagery being inserted into my head, one of the least easy topics for me to talk to people about, but I'll throw it out there occasionally, is lizard people, you know. And I hate to say it, I wasn't a lizard people person before this imagery was put at me, right? But it showed me, basically, bipedal people, for lack of better words, but they had the heads of lizards. It looked like their hands were people hands. It's like they had normal skin like we did on the hands, but lizard heads. And they were wearing very fancy suits, and it was very weird to me. And I don't know, maybe that was symbolic. I don't know. For people who are demonically possessed per se. Maybe it was literally lizard people. I don't know, but that's just what it was, the imagery in my head. And that's when kind of the imagery stopped. And it returned back to me sitting there in that space with Jesus. And that's kind of where it ended. That's kind of where it ended. He had just stood up and walked away, and our surroundings changed back into that white lighted space. And as he walked away, he returned to being undiscernible and surrounded by these golden rays, and then he was gone. And I came back too out of this meditation, and it was going on morning now. The sun was peeking up over the horizon, so I'd apparently been sitting there, for, I don't know, at least 5 or 6 hours in this weird state. So it was like a big loss of time. And yeah, like I said, not under the influence of anything when I was on the road back then. Fact of life, drugs cost money, and I wasn't on hard drugs. I've always kept it natural, but yeah, that's basically what there is to it. And that's this isn't me coming out and telling you guys, hey, I've been saved or anything like that. It was me having an experience with who I believe was Jesus. And I walked away from that feeling okay with that. Like, anyone would tell you, if you're not going to give yourself over to Jesus, you're just going to be one of those left behind. And I don't believe that's the case at all. He was very accepting, and he didn't offer me anything. I know somebody asked me to say, did he offer you anything? No, he didn't offer me anything. He didn't offer me fame, obviously. Didn't offer me riches, obviously. Nothing at all. It was almost like the most he offered me was this experience. That's why I kind of believe fully it is the Jesus everybody talks about. There was nothing wrong with me then, and I don't believe there is now. And it's kind of why I remain pagan. It's difficult to talk about to a lot of people. If something exists in somebody's mind and they go as far as to make it a belief system, or they believe this is real, it exists in your mind for a reason. There's ancestral memories. I would call it DNA memory almost, where you are born with the DNA of all the ancestors that came before you. And your earlier ones that nobody remembers or was able to interact with, in my opinion, they had very different lives than we did. The world looked very different. And I think those things were real physical memories that they had and had passed down to you. It's just kind of where I stand on it. So for me, all the gods, you can call them lowercase or uppercase, whatever you want. But to me, they're all real. They're all valid. They're all present. But what's easiest for me and makes sense to me is just sticking to the beliefs of my earlier ancestors. It's just what feels right for me. And apparently, Jesus don't have a problem with that. That's just kind of my story with it. And take it for what it is. It's, call it a hallucination, or doubt that I wasn't under the influence, whatever it is, but, you know, it's what it is. Hope y'all have a good day. I'm going to finish this delicious jackknife plug. Slinger loves you. Y'all be good to each other, your neighbors, your family. Alright, remember that. It's good versus evil. It's not Christian versus Muslim or anything like that. Alright? Keep it real, y'all.